I'm about to share with you a new Performance Max campaign strategy which we just figured out, which is responsible for generating this brand over a 15 and a 30x ROAS on a consistent basis. This is the type of strategy gurus hide from you because it's just so damn good. But before we dive into the actual strategy and the nitty-gritty details, let's take a look at the results this strategy has driven so far for this e-commerce brand. Now I'm looking at this brand right here on a 14-day period. So far we only have 2 sales for this first campaign right here with a 33x ROAS, because this is a strategy which we're just recently started to go heavy within this brand. However, there are some other campaigns right here generating almost close to a 10x ROAS. Now in total, this brand is roughly at a 6.68x ROAS, where the break even is roughly a 4x ROAS. So it's doing extremely well. We are in the scaling phase for this brand. But now let's start understanding the strategy a little bit more. And yes, this strategy does rely on Performance Max campaign solely. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of only look at the PMax campaign right here and disregard everything else here that we're currently running. So this Performance Max campaign strategy, it's divided into 3 separate parts. It's first part, cold plus retargeting approach. Second part is the non-branded approach, which I'm gonna go over very shortly what it means. And third and final part is the fully cold approach. Now let's go over the first one, which is the cold plus retargeting approach. Now, one thing you want to understand with Performance Max campaigns is if you have the same product within multiple different PMaxes, what's often going to happen is there's going to be overlap. There's going to be internal competition, because each one of these PMax campaigns, it's essentially a smart bidding based campaign, and putting the same product within each campaign, it's like telling the algorithm to go out and compete against yourself. That's exactly what's happening here. However, and there's a big however here, on a low scale, on a low level of volume, where we're barely spending 160 pounds in a 30-day period, this level of internal competition is very minimal. It barely is existent. And this is needed here, especially for this brand, because we need to test this approach out to figure out which kind of Performance Max campaign strategy works the best. Now, going over the cold plus retargeting approaches, this campaign approach right here, where essentially it's a general testing campaign, meaning if we go over to the products, we have all of the products in there. We're targeting both cold traffic as well as warm traffic, because if we go to settings, we have not done anything specific to change the approach for this campaign. It's bidding the same for new customers as well as the existing ones. But what we have done here is we have added 2 different distinctive asset groups in. One is just a Google shopping listing, a feed only approach where there's no assets at all, and one is the one with assets. And we're doing this because we're testing asset versus no asset approaches one by one, side by side, to see which one this campaign prefers the best. But in addition to that, we're doing the same approach across all of the other 2 Performance Max campaigns we have running. The first campaign approach was fairly simple, where we just have a generic Performance Max campaign. You might already have this for your own e-commerce brand, where we're just testing things. And this is something we do for a lot of the brands we handle under my Google Ads agency, Your Marketing, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year and you need extra help scaling to the very next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But the second approach we have here is the non-brand approach. This is essentially where we are not targeting any type of branded keywords at all. We have called into Google to kind of add the keywords to the negative keywords list. Any brand name related keywords we completely excluded from here, but everything else is essentially the same. The entire approach with the same products and whatnot. And as you can see, it's really starting to cook off here. It's not really spending that much money overall, because again, there is overlap here. There's the other PMax campaign spending money and whatnot. So this campaign is barely spending 14 pounds to maybe 20 pounds in a given day. But that's the non-brand approach, essentially just getting Google to exclude all of your branded keywords. And then finally, the new customers only approach. This is the approach where in the last 7 days or so, we're actually finding the best results from it. Like if you see right here, last 38 days, the ROAS was mediocre, but when we go to the last 14 days, the ROAS changes to a 33x. And then in the last 7 days, it's been hovering at roughly a 70x ROAS, because you don't see the conversions here because it has not fully populated yet due to the attribution period. But it's one of the best performing campaigns we have so far. And if we let this scale, well, now this is when it's going to really take off. Now, for this campaign, it's the same approach as everything else. The asset groups is the same, the product is the same, because we are actively trying to introduce overlap. We're trying to get these performance max campaigns to bid with each other and compete against each other, so we know the best approach to take here. But the only difference here is if we go on over to settings, we have made it so that this is only bidding for the new customer. So this is the biggest difference here. And what we see here is it's starting to do extremely well. It's not spending the most amount of money, as you see right here. It's barely spending anything, if any at all. But in the past, it used to spend a lot of money, and that too unprofitably. So we want to kind of change the approach completely. We want to have very little impact from new customers only, and just kind of let all of these three work together. And that's what we're seeing starting to happen. We're seeing a bit more stability in terms of the ROAS. The cost is recently also starting to go up, and everything, it's profitable. So don't always think that just because there's internal bidding, because you have multiple different performance max campaigns with the same products and whatnot, that things are not going to work. In fact, a lot of times it can work extremely well if you set it up the right way, if you have the right approach for all of these three different performance max campaigns. And eventually the main goal here is not to let all three of them run forever. It's to basically figure out on a 30 to 60 day period which one of these is actually doing the best. Is it the one that's non-brand? Because right now in a 30-day period, the non-brand is the one that's doing the best. And then the second best is this one right here that's testing all the products. And finally, the new customers only. But after a 30 to 60 day period, that's when you go in, you optimize by getting rid of the campaigns which are not performing up to the level you wanted to, and only letting one major one that's doing the best run, and then scale that eventually. And of course, scaling strategies, there's a lot of different ones you can find on my channel, but it's either vertical scaling, sort of scaling up the budgets, or it's horizontal scaling, scaling by adding more campaign tabs. It's essentially that simple. But again, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year and you need extra help scaling your brand to the next level, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But check out this video where I exposed a brand we blew up to $200,000 a month in revenue with some of these tactics right here.